You think the jungle is dangerous today? Imagine a world where the night belonged to monsters with teeth longer than your fingers, eyes glowing in the firelight, and bodies built to kill in silence. This was the age of the saber-tooth cats, when humans were not hunters but prey. The question is, how would you survive a single night? The answer: you wouldn't. Before there were kingdoms, cities, or even the first spoken words, the world belonged to predators, and none were more terrifying than the saber-tooth cats, creatures so powerful and strange that even today they feel like myths come to life. Imagine a lion but twice as heavy, its shoulders thick as stone pillars, its muscles coiled like springs, and from its jaw to enormous fangs curved like daggers, each as long as your hand, designed not to chew but to kill with surgical precision, piercing throats and arteries in a single devastating strike, dropping prey in seconds. Prey that included mammoths, giant sloths, bison, and sometimes even us, because in those early days of humanity, before fire was fully mastered, before weapons were anything more than sharpened rocks, humans were not hunters at the top of the food chain. We were part of the menu. Fragile apes, trying to survive in a world that did not care if we lived or died. And the evidence still whispers of this terror. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient bones etched with the scars of claws. Campsites suddenly abandoned with no sign of human conflict or natural disaster, and cave paintings where among the herds of animals and hunting scenes lurks the shape of cats with impossibly long teeth. Creatures perhaps feared, perhaps revered, perhaps even worshipped as gods of death. So picture it: a small band of 30 people huddled together, men, women, and children wrapped in animal skins, gathered around a fragile fire that flickers against the biting wind, knowing that beyond the circle of light stretches an endless darkness, and somewhere in that darkness, a predator is waiting. Its golden eyes catching the firelight for just a second, its breath silent, its patience endless, and then comes the growl, low, rumbling, vibrating through your bones, reminding you that in this world you are not safe. The saber-tooth didn't roar like a lion to announce itself. Fit didn't need to. It was the master of ambush, able to vanish into tall grass, hide in the shadows of forests, crouch silently at a waterhole until the moment was right, and when it struck, there was no time to react, no time to run, because you were already dead. And yet, as terrifying as this predator was, it may have been the very reason humans became what we are today. Because fear of beasts like the saber-tooth didn't just haunt us, it shaped us. Why do we gather in groups? Why do we build fires? Why do we take turns keeping watch at night? Why do we sleep light and wake at the faintest noise? These instincts are not random. They are survival strategies forged in the age of monsters, and scientists now believe that cooperation, trust, loyalty, even the beginnings of language, may have been forced into existence by the need to face predators too powerful for one human alone to fight. Think about it. One person with a spear stood no chance. But 20 people with spears, shields of fire, and a plan that was different, and slowly, painfully, across thousands of years, we turned fear into intelligence, terror into strategy, and prey into predators. But still, the saber-tooth was unlike any enemy we know today, because it wasn't reckless, it wasn't sloppy. It was a specialist in death, and every night in its world was a gamble of survival. And here's the mystery that lingers. If saber-tooths were so perfectly designed, so dominant for millions of years, why are they gone, and we are here? Was it simply climate change as the Ice Age ended, when mammoths and bison disappeared, leaving the cats without food? Or was it fragile apes who learned to make traps, sharpen weapons, wield fire? Did we slowly starve them out, competing for prey until their reign ended? Or did we hunt them deliberately, destroying the predators that hunted us, paving the way for humanity's rise? The truth lies buried in their bones, but what's certain is this: without saber-tooths, humans might never have been forced to cooperate so deeply, never learned to guard the night, never invented the rituals, stories, and songs that bound us together, never sharpened our minds against the whetstone of fear. And so the next time you think of humanity's dominance, Remember that it was not born in comfort or safety, but in firelight circles, surrounded by shadows, while eyes watched from the dark, and saber-like teeth gleamed just beyond the flames, shaping us with every heartbeat. And in the next part, I'll show you exactly how that fear didn't just keep us alive, but forged the very essence of human cooperation and survival. So stay with me, because the real story is only just beginning. To survive a single night in the age of saber-tooths, you would first need to understand the enemy. Because these cats were not reckless brutes that roared through the forest like today's lions, they were silent specialists, ambush predators whose entire body was tuned for patience and precision. Stalking from the shadows until the perfect instant, and when they struck, it was not a chase, it was an execution. Unlike cheetahs that rely on speed or wolves that rely on endurance, saber-tooths conserved their energy, striking only when their target was vulnerable, when the odds of success were absolute. Which meant that to early humans, the most dangerous moment was not when they saw the predator, but when they didn't. Because silence was its greatest weapon, and every shadow, every rustling leaf, every stillness in the night could mean death was crouched just a few feet away, waiting. So how did our fragile ancestors survive this world of invisible killers, with no iron, no guns, not even proper houses? Just spears hardened in fire, and the courage to stand together. Because, make no mistake, courage alone was not enough, had to innovate or die. And this is where the story of humanity truly begins. Because faced with enemies too powerful to fight alone, humans began to weave the threads of cooperation into something stronger than claws and fangs. They formed circles of fire. They built watch systems where one pair of eyes stayed open while the others slept. They developed warning calls, gestures, even the earliest hints of language, because a single scream in the night could mean the difference between survival and extinction. And over time, this constant pressure shaped not just how we lived, but how we thought, wiring our brains for community, trust, and shared fear. Think about it. Why do we gather in circles even today? Whether around campfires, dining tables, or stages, some anthropologists argue that this instinct is an echo of Ice Age nights, when the circle meant safety, when everyone facing inward could see danger approaching, and fire at the center pushed the darkness back just far enough to breathe, but never far enough to feel secure. And in that darkness lay the saber-tooth, watching, teaching us with every attack that the only way to survive was together. In fact, some scientists believe that the saber-tooth and other great predators were not just threats, but teachers that forced humans to evolve culture itself, because once survival required memory, story, and strategy, humans began to pass knowledge across generations where the predators lurked. What signs to watch for, which valleys to avoid, how to set traps. And in that transfer of knowledge, we became more than animals. We became storytellers, engineers, planners, and perhaps even dreamers, because terror doesn't just break you, it also forges you. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. Because, as perfectly designed as these cats were, as dominant as they seemed, they eventually vanished. And the question of why haunts scientists to this day was, it's simply the end of the Ice Age, when the vast herds of mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison disappeared, leaving saber-tooths without their favorite prey. Or was it something more deliberate, something that points back to us, the fragile apes, who once cowered in their fire-lit circles? Because humans were not just passive victims, they were relentless learners. And once we understood fire, once we hardened spears, once we learned to set coordinated traps, we began to push back. And it is entirely possible that we, the very species once hunted by saber-tooths, were among the reasons for their downfall. Think about that reversal of power, what it meant for early humans to finally have weapons sharp enough, strategies clever enough, and numbers great enough to turn from prey into predator. And imagine the stories those victories must have created. Myths of heroes who killed the fang beasts, legends painted on cave walls, tales told to children to give them courage. And in those stories, the seeds of culture, religion, and identity were planted. But even with the saber-tooths gone, their legacy lingered, because the fear they instilled had already rewritten the human brain. teaching us to build tighter communities, to place value in cooperation, to reward loyalty, to punish betrayal. Because in a world where one weak link meant death for the group, trust was not just moral, it was survival. And maybe that is the true gift Saber-Tooths left behind, the shaping of human society itself. Carved by terror, into resilience, into unity, into the stubborn refusal to give up. But here's the paradox you cannot ignore if I dropped you today. Right now, into that Ice Age night, with only a wooden spear and the clothes on your back. You wouldn't last 3 hours, because the instincts that once saved us have been dulled by comfort, the fire circles replaced by locked doors and electric lights, the constant vigilance softened by centuries of safety, and without those hardwired lessons of survival pressing on you every night. Your chances would vanish the moment you saw those golden eyes blinking from the dark. But the reason you are even here to imagine this is because your ancestors, trembling, terrified, and fragile, faced that nightmare and somehow endured. And in the next part, I'll show you how the Saber-Tooth didn't just shape our survival, but may have been responsible for some of the deepest emotions and social bonds we still carry today's. So don't look away, because the story of fear is about to become the story of love, loyalty, and the making of humanity itself. When the predators finally vanished, when the Saber-Tooth's roar was silenced forever, humanity did not simply step into safety, it stepped into something far stranger. Because the lessons carved into our ancestors' hearts did not fade with the beasts that taught them, they remained, burned into instinct, shaping emotions that still govern us today. In a world where one careless moment meant death, trust became more valuable than strength, loyalty more powerful than speed, and love itself emerged not as a luxury but as a weapon of survival. Because when you closed your eyes in the darkness, you needed to know someone else would stay awake, guarding the fire, protecting the group, carrying the weight of your life in their vigilance. And that fragile trust, born of terror, hardened into the deepest human bonds we know. This is why ancient burials matter so much, because they whisper to us that even then, people did not simply live and die. They mourned, they remembered, they cared. Leaving flowers, pigments, and precious objects with the bodies of those they loved, as if to say you are still one of us, even after death. And in that grief lies the first true evidence of love. Because grief means attachment, attachment means loyalty, and loyalty means that somewhere in the shadows of the Ice Age, humans chose not to walk alone, but to stand together, and in doing so, they birthed culture itself. Fire circles became stories, stories became rituals, rituals became myths, and myths became the foundations of civilizations. But at the root of it all lay the memory of predators who once stalked us and forced us to see one another not as rivals but as lifelines. And isn't it strange that even now, in a world of locked doors, glowing screens, and artificial light, the echoes of those nights still haunt us? You feel it in the way your skin prickles at footsteps behind you, in the way you sit closer to people you trust when fear creeps in the way darkness still awakens something primal inside your chest, as though the Saber-Tooth never fully left. But here is the paradox: if you were thrown back into that world with nothing but a wooden spear, you would almost certainly die before sunrise. Because the instincts that once kept our ancestors alive have been dulled by comfort. Yet the only reason you exist at all is because they did not die, because they endured, because they faced the monsters that should have destroyed them, and somehow, against all odds, they triumphed. And that is the true legacy of the Saber-Tooth. Was more than a predator, it was a sculptor of humanity, a silent architect of the emotions that define us. From fear to courage, from trust to loyalty, from grief to love. And though the beast itself is gone, its shadow still walks with us in every heartbeat of connection, every act of protection, every tear of mourning, every promise of devotion. So if you ask what the Saber-Tooth left behind, the answer is simple. Us, the species that turned terror into resilience, death into memory, and memory into meaning. And that is why, even though you would not last 3 hours in their world, the reason you are alive in this one is because your ancestors did, and in surviving, They gave birth to something no predator could ever kill: the